Welcome to Assembly Calendar. I'm Mike Friesen. With us for our program today, Assemblyman Mike Norris. Mike Norris represents the 144th Assembly District in New York State, an Assembly District that includes a nice chunk of western New York, parts of Erie County, parts of Niagara County, and parts of Orleans County. We want to thank you folks all across the area for joining us for our program today. Mike Norris. Oh, nice to get caught up with you. This is our first chance to sit down and chat since the big budget go around here at the state capitol of the past month or so. Well, past few months, really, right?
That's right, yes. In terms of the budget, we'll go right into it. There was so much that happened with the budget. $168.2 billion we're going to spend this year. That's almost $9,000 per New Yorker on the state budget. You know, Mike, the fact of the matter is spending in New York is way out of control. And I'm very proud to report back to the constituents back home that I voted no on the overwhelming majority of the state budget. Spending is too high, taxation is too high, and our debt service is nearly at the constitutional limit. And when I was back home over our recess and I spoke with many of the constituents, they were very pleased to know that someone is standing up to say enough is enough in Albany and we need to reduce spending. So with that being said, there were some positive things in the budget as well, and I want to just touch upon those. You know, our roads back home are in very bad shape. I met with many of the highway superintendents over the past several months, and they pled with us for more money. Governor Cuomo in his initial budget had kept the winter recovery money out of it, but I'm pleased to report that by working in a bipartisan manner with all of our state legislators, both in the state Senate and in the Assembly, we were able to restore the recovery money for our roads at $65 million statewide, as well as Pave New York, an additional $100 million for that, and $100 million for the Bridge New York program as well. These are important programs for our infrastructure, and I think that's the role of our state government, by the way, is to make sure we invest in infrastructure and invest in education, and I was very proud to fight for that in the budget.
Yeah, the roads, there have been numerous reports of how New York's roads and bridges and sewer pipes and water pipes and all the infrastructure, the things that keep the areas growing and moving, and that they're in serious disrepair.
They're in serious disrepair. And before I worked in the municipality, before becoming a member of the New York State Legislature, I worked with many town boards as a town attorney. I understand that the role of our government, whether it be at the state level or local government, even the federal government, is to provide solid infrastructure, because that provides good paying jobs. So people need to get to work to these jobs. I mean, that is the basic. I mean, I remember a long time ago, I had a retired city clerk now from Lockport and say, the main things, when you get up in the morning, first thing you do is you brush your teeth, you go to the sink, you need fresh water, you need good sewer, you need good roads to get to work. Those are the very basics of government, which we should be putting money into our infrastructure. So I'm pleased to report that in the state budget, working in a bipartisan manner with legislators from both sides of the aisle, we were able to restore the funding that was necessary to help provide a good, sound infrastructure into our communities.
There were a lot of pretty bad winter storms this season, like there is in most years in upstate New York, but one of the casualties here in Albany was the annual big get-together where all the highway superintendents from across the state come here and they all stand together and they make a lot of noise about just what you're talking about the importance of CHIPS funding and how important those dollars are to keeping the roads and the bridges of the state together and keeping them operable and keeping them safe for the people that use them. That didn't happen this year, but apparently the highway supers found another way to get their message across.
They certainly did. We met with them back in the district. I spoke with them on a regular basis. And just a shout out to our workers out there doing the road crews. We appreciate everything that you do. We know it's very difficult work, particularly as we move in the summertime. It's going to be very hot out there when you're working. And our highway superintendents, particularly in the 144th district, are all excellent. They do a tremendous job. And I want to thank them just for their advocacy, fighting for the dollars for the residents back home, but also for the work that they do. We appreciate everything you do.
Good opportunity to remind folks, too, you're traveling down the highway, you're used to going fast, but if you see workers out there, slow it down just a little bit, because those people are putting themselves out there to be working on the shoulders or in the roads themselves in some opportunities. Just slow it down a little bit, because you don't want something bad to happen.
Absolutely.
All
Just be
right.
very safe out there.
What else we got going on in this budget that you liked?
What I liked was also some funding for our libraries. You know, the libraries are the hub of our communities, particularly in the 144th District in Western New York. A lot of folks use a library still for broadband services because unfortunately not everyone has broadband in our area, though I continue to fight very hard for that. The governor knows too. I am fighting all the time to bring, broadband to every home in our district. And I know it's a long road to do that, but it's a basic right like water and sewer and electricity that we need broadband services back home. So the good news with our libraries, we're able to restore the money back and get an additional $1 million in general funding for our libraries, as well as an additional $10 million for construction funding. Now the governor had cut that by $10 million, so really it's a positive of $20 million for new construction in our libraries as well. So that was something that I was working very hard for with our librarians and our patrons. I met with the Lockport Library, I never forget this, just recently, and they told me that on a monthly basis, over 29,000 books and materials go through the Lockport Library on a regular basis, on a monthly basis. So our libraries are very important, and we need to make sure we put those dollars back into it. These are resources. These are the people's money, the taxpayers' money, the state budget. It's not my money. It's not the governor's money. It is your money. And I think it comes down to priorities and wanting to see where these dollars should be spent, and whether it be in roads, our libraries, and our education. Also, we had a 3.4% increase in school aid for our foundation aid. I think that's also very important to make sure that we invest into our children, we invest into the STEM programs for science and education technology as we move forward. I was very pleased to see that in the final budget we were able to increase funding as well for education.
That's just it. Some people, I fear, watching a program like this may glaze over when they hear talk of a state budget. But this is the stuff that's actually important to you folks, and ends up affecting you in a lot of ways, both positive and negative, depending on your point of view. We're talking about roads and bridges and education and some of the other things that directly impact you, physically impact you. But then also this stuff all gets paid for by tax dollars, and we'll be talking about that in just a little bit too. Before we get off the subject of some of the spending, we've been talking this past year or two about a lot about Lake Ontario and the problems that have happened there. Is there anything in this budget to help turn around the problems that have been in place for the past couple of years?
Yes, I'm very pleased to say, and this again, we've been working in a bipartisan manner, both sides of the aisle. I want to shout out to Senator Rob Ward, who's done a tremendous job in the Senate, as well as our Assembly colleagues, Assemblyman Hawley and Morinello in our region, fighting for more dollars for the southern shore of Lake Ontario. We were devastated last year due to Plan 2014 and the high water levels along the shore of Lake Ontario. A lot of our businesses suffered, our taxpayers, property owners along the way, and our tourism suffered as well. I mean, we had a lot of charter boats that couldn't even get out until June. I will commend the governor as well for working in a bipartisan manner. In this budget, we did two things. We added an additional $40 million in this budget. I am confident that that will have enough funding to provide dollars for any qualified applicant who is put in for their application for restoration, whether it be there with their rocks or with their houses. In addition to last year, we had $45 million in the budget, $15 million for businesses, $15 million for municipalities, and $15 million for property owners. What the budget does this year is it will now allow those pots to be interwoven. So let's say, for example, we didn't use the whole $15 million for the businesses. Now, under this budget language, we can send some of those dollars towards the $15 million for the taxpayers. So these are very positive steps. I'm very proud to be fighting for that. I never thought that on January 1st, 2017, when I became a New York State Assemblyman, that we would face such an issue in my district. And it has been devastating, and I understand for the people and the taxpayers along the southern shore of Lake Ontario. And this one issue in particular really made me realize how important of a role being your Assemblyman is, to be an advocate, to fight for you. And I'm very proud of that, and working in a bipartisan manner again with all members of the legislature, we're able to bring this much needed relief. And if you have any questions or concerns about your particular application, feel free to give my district office a call at 839-4690. That's 839-4690, and we will do our part to try to expedite your concerns with the agencies. I'd ask you to please be a little patient during this process. The budget is a one-year process coming up in this budget, and those applications are going to be dealt with, but we will get there, and we'll continue fighting for you. Thank you.
We'll be reminding you folks of how you can contact the Assemblyman's office again in just a couple minutes as we wrap up today's program. We have seen problems in state spending in the past couple of years. In fact, there's a trial that is just taken place that involves the governor's administration and procurement and how monies are spent and some of the corruption that can be in place involved in how the state spends its monies. As you went through this process, was any consideration given to, some transparency, putting some sunlight on the budget process, the spending process in the state to avoid this kind of situation from happening again?
Unfortunately, Mike, there was not. And this is one of the biggest disappointments that I have coming out of this budget, and quite frankly, being a legislator, because we need, the taxpayers back home are demanding that we have a transparent and open government. And in these economic programs where there's millions and millions of dollars being spent, we need to know where they're being spent, how they're being spent, and what are the results coming back from these economic programs. How many jobs are being created? How much dollars are being spent for particular programs? Nothing in this budget went to uncover those issues. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to continue to fight hard each and every day for this. I'm a proud sponsor of the State Contract Sunlight Act, which would open up the procurement process and have a database. But we need to continue to fight hard for this, and I'm going to continue. That was a big disappointment that there is no open and transparency in those economic programs. The other part that, now this is my second year here in Albany as your Assemblyman, this budget process, also, there was no sunlight in this process. I mean, we were voting on budget bills in the middle of the night, 2 nights in a row. And the fact of the matter is, these budget bills would come up and they would say, here they are, and then you have to vote. The governor did a message of necessity right away and says, you need to vote now within an hour or 2. So we get a very large budget bill placed literally on our desk through the computer, and they expect us to vote on it right away. After 4 men in the room negotiated behind closed doors in secrecy. This process is really wrong. And I'm going to continue to fight hard and do my part to stand up and fight for it, to bring more transparency and sunlight to the process. It's very, very unfortunate. Fortunately, we have good people who gave us some good briefings on it, so we know what was in those highlights of the budget. But again, I just want to make sure people know that this spending program, the budget program, is out of control, and we will continue to do our part to stand up for the taxpayers.
We'll continue to be talking about the ramifications of this budget passage in our next several programs. You can count on that. In the meantime, we want to let you folks know how you can reach your representative. We're going to put up on screen for you the contact information. You've got a boater safety class coming up too.
Yes, we do. Speaking of Lake Ontario earlier in the show, we have a boater safety course being held on Saturday, May 19th at the Barker Fire Hall from 10 to 5. This is a good opportunity for boaters and jet skiers to get their license through the Niagara County Sheriff's Office. If you need to sign up for that or need more information, please call my office at 839-4690.
Let's get that address and information up there again. The number to call if you're interested is available to you at 839-4690. Contact Assemblyman Mike Norris, and he'll be glad to help you out. That's going to be all the time we have for today. Mike Norris, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mike, for having me.
Look forward to seeing you folks for our next Assembly Calendar.